The grand chamber of the Galactic Consul hung in perfect silence, a vast dome of polished obsidian and living crystal that stretched high into the void of space. Around its curved walls, floating platforms held representatives from over 300 starfaring civilizations. Some were armored in gleaming exosuits, others pulsed with bioluminescent thought, and a few existed only as shimmering clouds of data. All watched the single human standing alone at the center of the chamber. Kale Renner wore no armor, no insignia, just a simple gray uniform. His hands were empty. His face showed no fear, only quiet focus. Above him, the consul's judgment sphere glowed a deep crimson, the color of condemnation. Species designation, Homo sapiens, intoned Vorin, the arbiter of the consul. Its voice resonated not through sound, but through thought, felt in the bones of every being present. You stand accused of violating the Prime Edict of Non-Aggression. Evidence confirms your warships destroyed 3 neutral Varelian outposts without warning or cause. The penalty for such an act is permanent quarantine. Your world severed from all galactic contact. Your people left to fade in isolation. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Many had expected defiance or desperate pleading, but Kale simply nodded. "I've seen the footage," he said, his voice calm, human, and startlingly clear in the mental hum of the chamber. "It shows our ships, our weapons, our signatures. It looks like guilt." He reached into his pocket and placed a small silver sphere on the dais. It hovered, then expanded into a 3-dimensional star map. The same battle replayed, but this time, with hidden layers revealed. "Look closer," Kale said. The image zoomed in on one of the attacking vessels. For a split second, its hull shimmered, not with damage, but with a shift in molecular structure. Its energy signature flickered from human standard fusion to something colder, sharper. Cathar mimicry tech. Banned under consul law for centuries. The Cathar hegemony built those ships, Kale explained. They copied our designs down to the last bolt. They used stolen human comms protocols. They even mimicked our battle tactics just enough to fool your long-range sensors. Another layer unfolded. Encrypted Cathar transmissions cracked by Earth's Cyber Intel Division played across the chamber. In them, a Cathar commander laughed as he ordered the false flag strike. "Let the consul crush the humans," he said. "Once Earth is gone, their defense coalition collapses. The border systems will fall like ripe fruit." Gasps echoed through the chamber. The Varelians, who had demanded Earth's punishment, now looked shaken. The Cathar delegation sat rigid, their armored faces unreadable, but their energy fields betrayed tension. Vorin's crystalline form dimmed slightly. "This is compelling. But why should we trust your data? You have motive to deceive." Kale didn't flinch. "Because we didn't stop at exposing the lie. We let them think it worked." He tapped the sphere again. A new image appeared. The Cathar's secret staging base. Hidden in the dust clouds of the Oort Belt. Dozens of warships powered down, waiting to strike Earth once the consul declared humanity rogue. Then, the feed switched to real time, one by one. The Cathar ships went dark, not from explosions but from internal shutdowns. Their AI cores, infected by a silent virus embedded in a fake human distress signal, turned against their own systems. Life support failed. Weapons locked. Navigation scrambled. The entire fleet was paralyzed without a single shot fired. "We didn't need to fight them," Kyle said. "We just needed them to believe we were weak enough to frame." Silence returned, heavier than before. The consul had judged species by strength, by firepower, by obedience. But humanity had done something different. They had used deception not to attack, but to reveal truth. They had outmaneuvered a war machine with code and patience. Then, a soft chime rang through the chamber, a sound no one had heard in over 2,000 years. All eyes turned to the highest balcony, where a delegation of beings sat wrapped in living vines and soft light. They were the Silthari, the galaxy's most peaceful species. They had not spoken in any consul session since the Great Wars ended. They never took sides. They never interfered. Yet now one of them rose. She was slender, her skin like pale bark, her eyes deep pools of green. Her name was Leora. She stepped to the edge of the platform, and her voice, though quiet, carried clearly. The Silthari request to speak on behalf of humanity. A ripple of shock passed through the chamber. Even Vorin seemed taken aback. "The Silthari have abstained from all judgments since the founding of this consul. Why break that now?" Leora looked down at Kale, then at the gathered delegates. Because what you see here is not just strategy. It is restraint. The humans had the power to destroy the Cathar fleet. Instead, they disabled it. They could have leaked the truth earlier and sparked a war. Instead, they waited, so you could see the full picture. She paused, her gaze sweeping the room. We have watched species rise and fall. Many are strong. Many are clever. But few choose mercy when vengeance is easier. Few protect the truth even when it costs them everything. Kyle said nothing. He simply stood, letting her words hang in the air. Voron's facets glowed brighter. The evidence is now in question. The original charges may be false, but the Consul cannot ignore the risk humanity represents. Your species is young, volatile, and unpredictable. Unpredictable. Kale finally spoke again. Or just new. You've had millennia to perfect your laws. We've had 70 years since we first reached orbit, and in that time we've gone from splitting atoms to healing ecosystems, from warring nations to a unified Earth Council. We learn fast, and we learn from our mistakes. He looked up at the Silthari. Maybe that's why they're speaking for us. Not because we're perfect, but because we try. Leora nodded slowly. The Silthari do not judge by past sins, but by future choices. And humanity's choice in this moment was to seek truth over victory. The chamber remained still. The judgment sphere above flickered, from red to amber. Voron turned to the assembled delegates. Given this new evidence and the unprecedented testimony of the Silthari, the Consul will delay final judgment. A full review will be conducted. Humanity will remain under observation but not under sentence. Relief washed over Kyle, but he kept his face neutral. He knew this wasn't over. The Cathar would not let this go, and the Consul's trust was fragile. As he turned to leave, Leora descended from her balcony on a vine lift, landing softly beside him. You surprised us, she said, her voice like wind through leaves. Kale offered a small smile. We surprise ourselves sometimes. She studied him for a long moment. There is more to your story than you showed them today. He met her eyes. There always is. Above them, the chamber's lights dimmed as delegates began to disperse. But the tension remained thick and electric. The galaxy had seen humanity as a threat. Now it saw something else. Something it didn't understand. And in the shadows of the Consul's corridors, a Cathar envoy activated a hidden comm. The humans survived the hearing, he whispered. Initiate contingency. Earth must not stand another week. Kale didn't hear it, but he felt it. The weight of eyes watching, the hum of unseen danger. He walked out of the grand chamber not as a condemned man, but as a marked one, and somewhere far away, on a blue-green planet circling an ordinary star. Billions of humans lived their lives unaware that their fate now rested not on weapons or warships, but on the quiet courage of one man, and the unexpected voice of the galaxy's most peaceful species. 6 months before the trial in the Grand Chamber, a small Silthari vessel drifted at the edge of human space. It was not a warship or a scout. It was a living seed pod shaped like a teardrop, covered in soft moss and breathing gently in the vacuum. Inside, Leora watched Earth through a membrane window, her fingers resting on the ship's neural vine. The Silthari had long studied Earth from afar. They saw the wars, the pollution, the scars left by human hands. But recently, something had changed. Sensors showed forests regrowing where deserts once spread. Oceans once choked with plastic now teemed with life. The planet was healing and fast. This was not natural recovery. This was choice. Leora requested permission to go down. The Silthari Council hesitated. Their kind had not walked among another species in centuries, but curiosity won. She took a form that would not frighten humans, tall, pale, with eyes like forest pools, and landed near a coastal village in what humans called Portugal. She walked barefoot on wet sand, watching fishermen haul nets at dawn. One man, older with sun-worn skin, held up a silver fish with glowing fins, a species thought extinct for decades. He looked at it for a long moment, then gently lowered it back into the sea. Not today, little one, he murmured. You've got more years to swim. Leora stood still, her heart, a slow plant-like pulse, quicken. She had seen logic, strategy, even compassion in other species. But this was different. This was love for something that gave nothing back. Over the next weeks, she traveled quietly. In Nairobi, she saw children planting trees in a schoolyard, each one named after a grandparent. In Kyoto, An old woman swept fallen cherry blossoms not to clean but to honor their brief beauty. In Buenos Aires, a group of strangers formed a human chain to rescue a dog trapped in floodwaters. Humans were messy. They argued, they hurt each other, they made terrible mistakes. But they also reached out. They remembered. They tried to fix what they broke even when no one was watching. One evening in a small village library, Leora sat beside a young girl reading a book about whales. The girl looked up. "Are you from far away?" she asked. "Yes," Leora said. "Do you have oceans where you're from?" "We do, and we lost many creatures to carelessness long ago." The girl frowned. "That's sad. But you fixed it, right?" Leora paused. "We're still learning how." The girl nodded as if that was enough. "We're fixing ours too." That night, Leora sent a message to her people. Not with data or logic, but with feeling. They grieve the world they broke, she wrote, and they love it enough to heal it. Back in the present, inside the Grand Chamber, Leora stood before the Consul. The vote on humanity's fate was about to begin. Many delegates still saw humans as dangerous. The Cathar had spread rumors that Earth's mercy was just a trick, that their restraint was weakness waiting to turn into rage. "The Silthari have never taken sides," Vorin said, its voice heavy. "Why now?" "Because peace is not just the absence of war," Leora replied. "It is the presence of care, and humanity shows that care in ways no other species does. They mourn their mistakes. They teach their young to do better. They protect life even when it slows them down." A Cathar delegate rose, its armor clinking. "Sentiment," it hissed. "Your words are pretty, Silthari, but useless. The humans have weapons that can crack planets. They speak of peace, but their history is soaked in blood." Leora did not argue. Instead, she turned to Kyle. "Would you let them see the truth not through data, but through memory?" Kale understood. He nodded. The Silthari did not use machines to record history. They grew it. In the heart of their world was the Garden of Echoes, a living network of vines, roots, and light that held the memories of their people. It could also hold the memories of others if offered willingly. Vorin was skeptical. "A memory can be faked. Emotion can be manipulated. Then test it," Kale said. "Pick one delegate. Let them walk in a human mind for 1 hour. If they return and say we are a threat, then condemn us." After a long silence, Vorin agreed. But not just any delegate. It would be Kale himself who would enter the garden, and a Consul observer would witness it all. 2 days later, Kale stood in the Silthari garden. It was unlike anything he had seen. Trees pulsed with soft light. Flowers opened and closed like breathing lungs. The air smelled of rain and soil. Leora placed a vine around his wrist. "This will connect you. Do not fight the memories. Let them flow." He closed his eyes. Instantly, he was elsewhere. He felt the hands of a doctor in Mumbai working through a fever outbreak, holding a child's hand as she slipped away, then staying to comfort the parents for hours after. He stood in Reykjavik during an earthquake. As a teacher, shielded her students with her own body, whispering stories to keep them calm until help came. He was on Mars, inside a military bunker, as a young soldier stared at a bomb countdown. Orders said detonate. It would kill enemy fighters hiding in a civilian tunnel. But he saw a child's toy near the entrance. He chose to disarm it instead, knowing he'd be punished. But the memories weren't all light. He also felt the shame of a factory owner dumping waste into a river, the rage of a mob turning on neighbors, the cold calculation of a general sending troops to die for a lie. Yet in each dark moment, there was a counter, someone speaking up, someone resisting, someone planting a seed in the ashes. When Kale opened his eyes, tears streaked his face. The Consul observer, a stoic Gliss diplomat, was also weeping, its methane breath fogging in the cool air. Back in the chamber, the observer spoke. "I saw cruelty, but also courage. Not the kind that wins battles, but the kind that builds tomorrows. This species is not pure, but it is trying." The vote began. Delegates cast their judgment through light pulses. Some glowed red, condemnation. Others blue, mercy. The count was close. Too close. As the final votes came in, the chamber held its breath. The tally froze, 156 to 156, a tie. Vorin's facets dimmed. One voice remains. The Silthari elder has never voted. "Will you now?" All eyes turned to the oldest Silthari, a being so ancient its bark-like skin held constellations. It had not spoken in 500 years. It rose slowly. Not to cast a vote, but to speak. If Earth is silenced, it said, its voice like roots cracking stone, then the galaxy loses its best hope for change. The Silthari will not stand by. If humanity falls, we fall with them. A stunned silence followed. The Silthari had no weapons, no fleet. But their word carried more weight than any army. To harm Earth now would mean shattering the galaxy's moral center. Before the consul could respond, Kale's wrist comm buzzed. A priority message from Earth Command. He read it, his face going pale. The Cathar, he whispered. They're coming. A full invasion fleet, 200 warships. They're jumping into the Sol system in 6 hours. Panic flickered through the chamber. The Cathar had ignored the consul's authority. They would burn Earth to prove a point. Kale looked at Leora. We don't have enough ships. Not even close. She placed a hand on his arm. Then you must show them something they cannot destroy. What's that? Hope. In that moment, Kale understood. He activated the chamber's open channel. Earth Command broadcast everything. The garden memories. The truth about the Cathar lies. Send it on all frequencies, even enemy bands. But they'll jam it, someone said. Not if it's carried on 1,000 civilian ships, Leora said. The Silthari will send our vessels. We'll carry your truth into their fleet. Kale nodded. And we'll stand between them and Earth, not to fight. To bear witness. As the consul scrambled to respond, Leora leaned close to Kale. Trust us, she whispered. He looked at her, this peaceful being who had chosen to step into war for strangers, and felt something he hadn't in years. Not fear, but faith. Outside the chamber, stars burned cold and distant. But in the heart of the galaxy, something new was growing. Not a weapon, not a shield, but an idea that even the fiercest species could choose to protect, not destroy. And as the Cathar fleet prepared to strike, they did not know that the real battle would not be fought with guns, but with memories, with mercy, and with the quiet courage of those who stand for others, even when they have nothing to gain. The Silthari Garden of Echoes was not built, it grew. Over 10,000 years, generations of Silthari had walked its paths, sharing their joys, regrets, and quiet hopes with the living vines. The garden remembered everything. It did not judge. It simply held space for truth. Now, that truth would be used in a way never intended. Kyle stood at the garden's heart, surrounded by glowing roots that pulsed like slow heartbeats. Leora knelt beside him, her hands pressed to the soil. The garden can do more than show memories, she said. It can send them, like seeds on the wind. Earth Command had already begun broadcasting human stories across every open channel, tales of doctors, teachers, farmers, and children who chose kindness over fear. But signals could be blocked. Lies could drown out truth. The garden offered something stronger, direct resonance. A feeling so real it could not be denied. We will link the garden to your fleet's comms, Leora explained. Not as data, but as experience. Anyone who receives it will feel what your people felt. The weight of loss, the warmth of healing, the choice to do better. Kyle nodded. Even the Cathar? Especially them. Back in the Sol system, Earth's defense fleet formed a thin line between the approaching Cathar armada and the blue planet behind them. The human ships were outnumbered 10-1. Their weapons were charged, but their orders were clear. Do not fire unless fired upon. This was not a battle of steel, but of will. On the bridge of the lead Cathar warship, Commander Drex watched the human formation on his screen. He sneered. They think standing still makes them brave. It only makes them targets. His second-in-command, a young pilot named Joran, said nothing. He had seen the human broadcasts, not just the official ones, but the raw, unfiltered clips sent by Silthari vessels drifting near the battle line. In one, a human child in Jakarta had planted a tree for a bird species that went extinct a century ago. So it won't be forgotten, she'd said. Joran had never seen anyone mourn something they never knew. Sir, he said quietly, what if they're not lying? Drex turned, eyes blazing. Sentiment is weakness. The humans are animals who learn to speak, nothing more. But doubt had taken root. Meanwhile, in the garden, Kale closed his eyes as the vines wrapped gently around his arms. Leora began to chant, not in words but in harmonic tones that made the air shimmer. The garden responded. Light flowed from the roots into Kyle, filling him with memories not his own. A woman in Oslo giving her last coat to a stranger in winter. A boy in Lagos sharing his meal with a stray dog. An old man in Vancouver apologizing to a river for the pollution of his youth. Each memory carried a single thread: responsibility. Not blame, but the quiet understanding that we are part of something larger, and we must care for it. The garden wove these threads into a single pulse. Then, with a surge of light, it launched the resonance into space, not as a signal, but as a wave of pure empathy. It reached the Cathar fleet seconds later. On every ship, every soldier felt it. Not in their ears or eyes, but in their bones. Suddenly, they were holding a dying child in Mumbai. They were planting a tree in Nairobi. They were releasing a silverfin into the sea. Drex roared, slamming his fist on the console. "Shut it out. It's a trick." But Joran stood frozen. In his mind, he saw his younger sister, lost years ago to a plague the Cathar government ignored. And in the human memory, he saw a doctor who stayed with a dying child until the very end, even when there was no cure. Tears welled in his eyes. "They feel it too," he whispered. "They feel the pain, and they still choose to heal." On the human side, Kyle opened his eyes. "It's working," he said. Leora nodded. "But feeling is not enough. They must choose." Back in the console chamber, Voran watched the live feed from the Sol system. The Cathar fleet had stopped advancing. Confusion rippled through their ranks. Some ships powered down weapons. Others broke formation. Then, a new transmission crackled across all channels. It was Joran. "My name is Joran of the Cathar 7th Fleet," he said, voice shaking but clear. "I have seen the truth. The humans did not attack Varel, we did. Our command lied to start a war. I will not be part of this." Before Drex could respond, Joran locked the flagship's weapon core and opened all internal comms. "To my brothers and sisters, we have been used. The humans stand unarmed before us not because they are weak, but because they believe we can be better." "Are we?" Silence. Then one by one, other Cathar ships signaled agreement. A mutiny bloomed in the void. Drex screamed orders, but it was too late. Half the fleet turned their guns, not on Earth, but on the command vessels. In the chaos, Earth's fleet held position. They did not fire. They simply watched as the Cathar tore themselves apart. In the console chamber, the final vote was called. The tally had been tied, but now, with the Cathar deception exposed and their fleet in rebellion, the balance shifted. Delegate after delegate changed their vote to blue. Voran rose. Its crystalline form glowed with soft gold light, the color of acceptance. "The judgment is clear," it announced. "Humanity is not a threat to galactic peace. It is its unexpected guardian." A wave of relief swept through the chamber, but Kale felt no triumph. He looked at Leora. "This isn't over. The High Command still lives. They'll see this as betrayal, not justice," she nodded. "Then we must be ready." As celebrations began among the minor species, many of whom had suffered under Cathar rule for decades, Kale received another message. This one was encrypted, sent from a hidden relay near Pluto. It showed a facility buried deep in a dead moon orbiting a Cathar core world. Inside, a machine pulsed with unstable energy. Labels in Cathar script read, "My Project Eclipse." "What is it?" Leora asked. Kale's face went pale. "A stellar destabilizer. If activated, it will collapse Sol's star into a black hole. Earth, Mars, the moons, everything gone in minutes." "They wouldn't," she said. "They will," Kale replied, "because now they have nothing left to lose." The Consul had spared Earth, but the Cathar High Command would rather burn the galaxy than let humanity stand. Voran approached them. "You have won the judgment. But the war is not over." "No," Kale said. "It's just entered a new phase." Leora placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then we face it together." Outside the chamber, stars glittered like scattered seeds. Somewhere out there, a machine waited to end a world. But here, in this moment, two unlikely allies stood side by side. Not as warrior and peacemaker, but as partners in something fragile and new. Hope. And hope, they both knew, was the hardest thing to kill. The news of Project Eclipse spread like cold fire through the newly formed alliance. Earth scientists confirmed it. The Cathar had built a machine deep inside their fortress moon, Nix 7. It was tied directly to Sol's magnetic field. If triggered, it would send a pulse that twisted the sun's core inward. In less than an hour, Earth would be swallowed by darkness. There was no defense. No shield could stop a dying star. Kyle stood in Earth Command's war room, staring at the countdown on the main screen. 72 hours. Around him, generals, engineers, and diplomats argued over options. Attack the moon? Impossible. The Cathar had layered it in quantum shielding. Hack the system? The machine used organic circuitry, grown from living Cathar tissue, not code. Send a team to destroy it from within? Suicide. Then Leora entered, silent as mist. She carried no weapons, only a small seed pod glowing faintly in her hands. The garden can stop it, she said. All eyes turned to her. The Eclipse machine is alive, she explained. It thinks. It feels fear, obedience, rage, all programmed by the Cathar. But living things can be changed. The garden's resonance doesn't just share memory, it can rewrite instinct. Kale understood first. You want to overload it with empathy? Yes, she said. Flood its mind with so much care, so much sorrow for what it's about to destroy that it shuts itself down. But it needs a conduit, Kyle said. Someone has to carry the garden's essence into the heart of the machine. Leora nodded. The link must be physical, close. The carrier must be willing to hold both the pain and the hope of 1,000 lives. Silence filled the room. Everyone knew what that meant. The carrier would be exposed to the machine's full fury, its rage, its programming, its will to obey. Few minds could survive that. I'll go, Kale said. No, Leora said gently. Not alone. The machine was built to hate humans. It will reject your presence instantly, but if a Silthari carries the garden, and a human carries the truth, together we might reach it. Kale looked at her. You'd risk your life for us. You already risked yours for the truth, she replied. Now it's my turn. Preparations began at once. The Silthari offered their fastest seed ship, the Whispering Leaf, grown for silent travel through gravitational shadows. Engineers from the Gliss, a methane-breathing species long oppressed by the Cathar, modified its hull with stealth moss that absorbed sensor waves. The Veln nomads mapped a path through the shattered belt, a region of unstable space the Cathar thought impassable. As they readied to leave, dozens of small ships from minor systems gathered near Earth's orbit. They carried no weapons, only supplies, data crystals, and messages of support. We cannot fight, said a delegate from the insectoid Miri. But we can bear witness. If you fall, the galaxy will know why. Kale thanked them. Then he turned to Leora. Ready? She held out the seed pod. Hold this. It contains the garden's core. When we reach the machine, press it to the central node. I will guide the resonance. They boarded the Whispering Leaf. The ship hummed as it launched, slipping past the remains of the broken Cathar fleet. Mutineers now controlled half the armada, but the High Command still held Nix 7, and they were watching. The journey took 2 days. Inside the ship, Kale and Leora sat in silence, preparing their minds. Leora taught Kale to breathe with the ship's rhythm. Fear is natural, she said, but do not let it drown your purpose. He thought of Earth, the smell of rain on dry soil, the sound of children laughing in city parks, the quiet hum of a library at night. He would not let that vanish. When they reached the outer edge of Cathar space, alarms whispered. Patrol ships scanned the area. The Whispering Leaf folded its light, becoming nearly invisible. They slipped through like a shadow. Nix 7 loomed ahead, a dead moon wrapped in black metal and pulsing veins of red energy. At its center, a tower of bone and steel rose, the Eclipse core. They landed in a crater far from the main entrance. Dressed in cloaks woven from Silthari vines, they moved on foot through tunnels carved by ancient drills. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and decay. Inside the fortress, Cathar guards patrolled, but their movements were slow, distracted. The mutiny had shaken their ranks. Kale and Leora avoided them, guided by faint pulses from the seed pod. It sensed the machine's heartbeat. Deep below the surface, they found the chamber. The Eclipse core stood in the center, a monstrous fusion of flesh and metal, its surface twitching like a living thing, wires snaked into the moon's crust connecting to Sol itself. A countdown glowed on its side. 12 hours. Kyle stepped forward, but Leora stopped him. Wait, let me speak to it first. She placed her hands on the chamber wall. The vines on her arms glowed. A soft hum filled the room. The machine shuddered. It knows we're here, she whispered. Suddenly, red lights flared. Alarms blared. The doors sealed shut. From the walls, armored Cathar soldiers emerged, weapons raised. But they did not fire. They watched, confused. Then a voice echoed, not from a speaker, but from the machine itself. Deep, distorted, full of pain. "Why do you come?" it growled. "You are the enemy." "You bring lies," Kale stepped forward. "We bring truth." He held up the seed pod. "You were made to destroy, but you don't have to obey." The machine trembled. "I am bound. My purpose is fire." "No," Leora said softly. "Your purpose is choice. All living things have it." She began to sing a silthery lullaby older than stars. The seed pod in Kale's hands brightened. Memories poured out. Not just human, but Silthari, Gliss, Veln, Miri. Every species that had suffered, healed, and hoped. The machine recoiled. "Stop, these feelings. They burn." "They're supposed to," Kyle said. "Because you're alive, and life hurts. But it also loves." The Cathar soldiers lowered their weapons. One touched his chest, tears in his eyes. I remember my daughter's laugh," he whispered. "Before the war took her." The machine's surface cracked. Light seeped through. But then a new voice boomed from above. "Traitors!" High Commander Vrak stood on a balcony, flanked by elite guards. His armor gleamed with hate. "You think kindness can stop destiny? The galaxy must be cleansed of weakness. Starting with you," he raised a detonator. "If I cannot control the eclipse, I will trigger it early." Kale's heart stopped. Leora acted faster. She threw a vine at the ceiling. It latched onto a power conduit and yanked. Sparks flew. The lights died. In the darkness, Kale ran. He leaped onto the machine, pressing the seed pod to its core. "Now!" he shouted. Leora poured every memory, every feeling, every act of quiet courage into the link. The machine screamed, not in rage, but in grief. It saw the child planting a tree, the fisherman releasing the silver fin, the doctor holding a dying hand. It saw what it was about to erase. With a final pulse of light, the eclipse core went still. The countdown stopped at 0007:23. Vrak howled in fury, but his guards turned on him. "You lied to us," one said. "You made us monsters." Above, the whispering leaf opened its hatch. Kale and Leora climbed aboard, exhausted but alive. As they rose from Nix 7, they saw something unexpected. Across the Cathar Empire, lights were going out, not from destruction, but from surrender. The mutiny had become a revolution. Back on Earth, people watched the stars, not knowing what had been saved. But they felt it. A shift in the wind, a quiet peace returning. In the consul chamber, Vorin stood before the newly formed council. Today, peace was not won by force, it said. It was grown by two species who chose to believe in each other. Kale and Leora said nothing. They simply stood together, looking out at the galaxy. The war was over, but the work, the real work of healing, had just begun. The silence after the storm was deeper than anyone expected. With Project Eclipse disabled and the Cathar High Command overthrown, the galaxy held its breath. No one fired a shot. No one issued a threat. For the first time in centuries, peace was not enforced. It was chosen. Kale and Leora returned to Earth not as heroes, but as witnesses. They had seen the darkest corners of war and the quietest sparks of hope, and they carried both with them. Earth Command welcomed them with quiet respect, not fanfare. There would be no parades. The real victory was in the stillness, but peace was fragile. The Cathar Empire had shattered into factions, some seeking justice, others revenge. Minor worlds once crushed under Cathar rule now demanded reparations. Old grudges stirred in the void. The consul, reformed under Vorin's guidance, struggled to hold the pieces together. Then came the message from the dead moon. Buried in the ruins of the Eclipse core, a final transmission activated. It was not from Vrak. It was older. From the original builders of the machine, a lost Cathar sect that had created it not as a weapon but as a last resort. Their warning was clear. If the galaxy forgets why it chose peace, the eclipse will rise again, not by hand, but by heart. The machine was gone, but the idea behind it remained. Hatred could rebuild it. Fear could reignite it. Kyle knew what had to be done. "We can't just stop the weapon," he told the new council. We have to heal the wound that made it. Leora agreed. The garden can help, but not alone. So they proposed something no one had ever tried, a shared memory network. Not just for humans or Silthari, but for every species willing to join. A living archive of pain and healing, built not in one world but across many. A place where a Cathar child could feel the sorrow of a human mother who lost her son to war, and where a human could understand the shame of a Cathar soldier who followed orders too blindly. At first many refused. Memories are private, said a Gliss elder. To share them is to be weak. Or to be brave, Leora replied. Slowly, others came forward. A Vel nomad shared the memory of watching his homeworld burn. A Miri worker showed the joy of rebuilding a hive after famine. Even former Cathar soldiers offered fragments, moments of doubt, of regret, of quiet resistance. Earth opened its doors. In Geneva, on a hill overlooking the city, they began to build the first node of the network, a garden where human trees grew beside Silthari vines, where Gliss crystals hummed in the soil, and where light from 1,000 worlds touched the same ground. Kale and Leora walked there often. One evening, they watched as children from different species played together, planting seeds, sharing stories, laughing in languages they barely understood, but hearts that did. They're not afraid of each other, Kale said. Because they haven't learned to be yet, Leora replied. Our job is to make sure they never do. But the past was not done with them. Deep in the ruins of Nyx 7, a single organic circuit from the Eclipse core pulsed faintly. Buried under rubble, it had survived. And it remembered. It sent out a whisper, not a signal, but a feeling. A seed of fear. It drifted through space, unnoticed, until it brushed against a lonely mind on a distant mining colony. That mind, already angry and lost, felt the fear grow. Soon it began to speak of old enemies, of hidden threats, of the need for strength. The whisper spread. Kale felt it first as a dream, a shadow over the sun. He woke in cold sweat. Leora was already at his door. It's starting again, she said. They traced the whisper to the mining colony. There they found a small group gathering, led by a former Cathar officer who claimed humanity was secretly building a new weapon. His proof? Lies stitched from half-truths and old footage. Kale could have arrested him. Leora could have silenced him with the garden, but they chose a different path. They invited him to Geneva. At first he refused. But curiosity won. He arrived in armor, eyes full of suspicion. Kale met him alone, no guards, no weapons. Why bring me here? The officer asked. To show you what we're really building, Kyle said. He took him to the garden. Not to argue, not to prove, but to listen. They sat under a tree grown from seeds saved after Earth's last great fire. Children played nearby. Human, Silthari, Gliss. Then a small Cathar boy, orphaned in the Civil War, ran up holding a flower. He handed it to the officer. For you, he said in broken standard. It's blue, like your eyes. The officer froze. No one had given him a gift in 20 years. That night he walked the garden alone. In the quiet he let the shared memories touch him. The pain, yes, but also the hope. By dawn he was gone, but he left a note. Tell them I'm sorry, and thank you. The whisper faded. Back in the consul chamber, Vorin addressed the full council. We once judged species by their power. Now we see true strength is in the choice to understand. The council voted unanimously to make the memory network permanent. Earth and the Silthari would co-lead it, not as rulers, but as gardeners. Years passed. The garden in Geneva grew, so did others, on Mars, on Silthar Prime, on former Cathar worlds. The network became a living bridge. Wars did not vanish overnight, but they ended faster. Leaders listened more. Children dreamed bigger. Kale grew older. His hair turned gray, his steps slower. But his eyes still held that quiet fire. Leora changed too. Her bark-like skin deepened with rings of time, each one a story shared, a wound healed. One spring morning, they stood on the same hill where it all began. Below, a new group of children planted a tree together. Human hands, Silthari vines, Cathar claws, all working the same soil. A young girl looked up. "Will this tree live a long time?" Kyle smiled. "If we care for it, yes," Leora added. "And if we remember why we planted it." Far above, in the silent chamber of the consul, Vorin watched the feed from Earth. Around it, delegates from hundreds of worlds sat in peace, not because they were forced to, but because they had chosen to. The Arbiter's voice, once cold and sharp, now carried warmth. "We judge them by their weapons, but they were always defined by what they protected. And in that moment, across the galaxy, a million small acts of kindness bloomed, not as grand gestures, but as quiet choices to care." The stars watched, and for the first time in a long time they shone a little brighter.